have not been paying VAT. And this particular regulation is to correct that particular mismatch between the local market and the digital market operating outside this country. So the necessity of the amendment, Mr. Speaker, of this VAT regulation is to ensure non-resident suppliers who account for a large percentage of the digital marketplace in Kenya must register and account for VAT on supplies made in Kenya. The committee, Mr. Speaker, scrutinized the regulations in accordance with the Constitution, the Interpretation and General Provisions Act Cap 2, the VAT Act number 35 of 2013, and the Statutory Instruments Act number 16 of 2013. The committee noted that the value-added tax regulations seeks to provide for the legal framework to enable the government to implement the tax measures for financing its economic development agenda. The regulation, Mr. Speaker, seeks to ensure that the non-residents who account for a very large part of the business in this particular sector are registered as VATable in this country. Mr. Speaker, we considered a number of parameters with regard to these regulations. And among them, Mr. Speaker, just to mention three of them, that these regulations were published on the 14th of April 2023, and therefore they comply with the Statutory Instruments Act that requires that the regulations must be forwarded to the National Assembly within 7 days of its publication. The second thing that we considered, Mr. Speaker, is the adequacy and sufficiency of public participation and consultation by the regulatory making authority, so that they must comply with an authority was expected to comply to ensure that all those the suppliers of this digital business in the marketplace are sufficiently and adequately consulted when levying this particular tax on these suppliers. And so, Mr. Speaker, we found that all the parameters that are required under the Statutory Instruments Act were therefore complied. It is indeed a very short regulations which contain about 5 paragraphs, Mr. Speaker. And I wish, therefore, Mr. Speaker, to beg that I move and request the Honorable Kishimu, the Vice Chair of the committee, to second this motion. I thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Who is seconding? Vice Chair, Honorable Kishimu. Give him the mic.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Go ahead, Mheshimiwa.
I rise to second the motion. Mr. Speaker, the chairman has substantially covered what the committee considered in reaching the decision that is before this House. Mr. Speaker, safe to add that the committee was also satisfied that after the regulations were brought before the committee and they were published, there was no complaint from any player in the area of digital market and internet to the regulations. And that, in that case, Mr. Speaker, the committee also looked at the public participation that was also done by the regulatory making authority, and we were satisfied that all the parameters that are supposed to be considered by the Committee of Delegated Registration were met and fully satisfied. Mr. Speaker, these regulations, I must buttress that they are supposed to capture those people that have been operating within the digital market and paying nothing in the coffers of the government through the regime of value-added tax. And this these regulations now seek to net them and bring them within the ambit of the same, under the same level with those people that have not been operating within the digital space and the internet. Mr. Speaker, there might not be much to say about this because the Committee on Delegated Legislation's mandate is so limited into making sure that the regulations abide with the Constitution, the relevant statutes, and also public participation has been done, which I must confirm, as the chairman has said or has moved, that they were all adhered to. So, Mr. Speaker, without much ado, I seek to support and second the motion. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, all the honorable members. I now propose the question, which is that this House adopts the report of the Committee on Delegated Legislation on its consideration of the value-added tax, electronic, internet, and digital marketplace supply regulations 2023 laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, 5th July 2023, and pursuant to the provisions of Section 67 of the Value-Added Tax Act 2013, approves the value-added tax, electronic, internet, and digital marketplace supply regulations 2023, published as legal notice number 29 of 2023. Before that, allow me to acknowledge the following schools in the public gallery: Don Bosco Secondary School, Manyata, Embu; Olmoran High School, Laikipia West, Laikipia; and from the Speaker's Gallery, Chesnende Girls Secondary School, Kipkelion East, Kericho. The Honorable Cherorot, the member for Kipkelion, is it East, has asked me to give him a minute to acknowledge the students. On our behalf, acknowledge all the schools. The Manyata MP is also here. So you have 2 minutes, Cherorot.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this unique opportunity to welcome all the schools who have visited our gallery this afternoon. More so, Mr. Speaker, Jesinende Girls from my constituency, Kipkelion East. And I want to encourage our students, Mr. Speaker, to take that opportunity and make use of their visit to Parliament to familiarize themselves with the functions of the government. In addition to that, Mr. Speaker, I want also to take this opportunity to thank you and His Excellency the Deputy President for coming to condole with us in our constituency, or in my constituency, during the grisly accident which happened at Londiani Junction. I want also to extend my gratitude to my fellow members who came also to condole with us. Mr. Speaker, I want also to thank the government for assisting, and I want also to take this opportunity, Mr. Speaker, also to support the motion or the approval of the digital and electronic tax, added tax, Mr. Speaker, because that will go a long way in helping our youth. Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker.
Not open for debate yet. Member for Manyata.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for this opportunity
2 minutes.
to welcome all the students and visitors in the gallery, especially, Honorable Speaker, my good friends from Don Bosco High School, Manyata constituency, and also a young school called Camview Secondary School that is in the Senate. And Honorable Speaker, I want to tell them that this is a house that is very keen to see the improvement of education and ensuring that our students get the best they can get. Honorable Speaker, I want to say that this is the same house that has passed the biggest budget in the education sector ever since this country was given independence in 1963. And this is, Honorable Speaker, so that we can see an improvement in what we are doing in the education sector, and also at the same time get our young people ready to face the world by having them equipped with the right, Honorable Speaker, skills to face the skills. Honorable Speaker, Don Bosco High School is one of those schools that has been catering for our very needy students, especially with a lot of equipment, because it's a missionary school, Honorable Speaker. So I want to also commend the runners of that school who are missionaries, and I would really like to say that we shall ensure we continue supporting our school system and ensure that our school system get to the best that they can get, Honorable Speaker. Welcome all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All the honorable members, my screen is full. I don't know if it's full for the delegated legislation debate or it's full as usual. Okay. Bukose?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I want to support the amendment on regulations as brought by Honorable Chepkonga, the chair of the delegated legislation, on to approve the value-added tax on electronic, internet, and digital marketplace supply regulations 2023 as published in the legal notice number 29 of 2023. Honorable Speaker, when you look at those regulations, I think it's only 5 paragraphs in which it needs to be done, and just to appreciate that, I think there must be some bit of fairness, Honorable Speaker, in terms of VAT. And I know this is when it comes to VAT, I know it brings a lot of challenges to some of the people, because they realize that maybe the government needs to be supported not to be able to collect some money so that it fails and they have something to say in the next elections. But I want to tell them to hold their horses and allow the government to perform its duties, because every government has a responsibility to collect taxes, to be able to make sure that its employees are well taken care of, to make sure that services are provided to wananchi. Because, Honorable Speaker, when all of us as members of parliament demand that all the money for CDF has to be remitted to our various accounts so that we can be able to make sure that our projects are completed. Just as we have resumed from our short recess, Honorable Speaker, many of us are happy that many of our projects are continuing. But it's because the government was able to, whatever taxes they collected, they were able to remit all the money that each member required in his constituency to perform his CTF functions. So with those few remarks, Honorable Speaker, I support these regulations.
Thank you, Honorable Wandai.
Mr. Speaker, let me just make a few comments on this motion. On this motion, and I take note of the fact that it is coming shortly after the forceful passage of the Finance Bill 2023. Mr. Speaker, in principle, trying to look for areas to get additional taxes is not a bad thing, especially these areas that have previously not been exploited, especially the electronic, internet, and digital market places. It is a good thing. And in fact, how I wish this kind of thinking should have informed the drafting of the now ill-fated finance bill. Because any government that is considerate of the plight of its people must think twice before bringing on board or before effecting additional taxes on the people. It makes much more sense trying to look for areas which are previously not taxed and then tax them, as opposed to continually adding taxes, more and more taxes on an already overburdened populace. Mr. Speaker. So this should have been the best approach, rather than going to fuel and increasing the VAT twofold, actually doubling VAT on fuel. Yet you have got other areas you could have explored, like you're attempting to do through these regulations now. So that is my point. That in future, those mandarins in this government should be more considerate of the plight of the ordinary mwananchi who is suffering under the burden of taxes, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I am also saddened to note, of course, even as we debate this, you know, we live in a country that is governed by the rule of law. One of the cardinal principles, indeed, values in the Constitution 2010 is that every citizen, I think at Article 3, every citizen is under an obligation to respect the Constitution and, I believe, enabling laws. So, Mr. Speaker, it is a saddening moment that this House can be sitting this afternoon, of course, to discuss, among other things, new measures to raise taxes, when the government has blatantly disobeyed express court orders, which suspended the operationalization of the Finance Act 2023. It is indeed a very sad day that we could be here sitting and talking normally, as if things are normal. What message are we sending to the people? What message are we sending to the international community? What message are we sending to possible future investors in this country? If a whole government can blatantly disregard an express court order, by now I would have expected the Honorable Kimani Chungwa, my good friend, to invite the Attorney General here to explain to the Kenyan people through their representatives in this House why the government has refused to obey an express court order which has suspended the operationalization of the Finance Act 2023. As we sit here, Mr. Speaker, Kenyans are being charged extra taxes when they buy fuel, a taxation which is outrightly unconstitutional and illegal based on the express court order. What example are you showing the world, you people in Kenya Kwanza? What example are you showing us?
Yes, Majority Leader. Give him the mic.
Honorable Speaker, thank you. I raise on a point of order, Honorable Speaker, because I know the leader of minority is a newly crowned lawyer, and I am not one, so
lawyers are never crowned.
He ought to know better than me.
Lawyers are never crowned, Majority Leader.
They are not crowned. They are admitted to the bar. Maybe it's because he's yet to be admitted to the bar. And I'm sure when he gets admitted to the bar and joins your ranks and that of Senior Counsel Otiende Amolo, he will be privy to the rule of sub judice, because the matters now that he's going into are matters that he very well knows, are matters before court. And they are ably represented by Senior Counsel Otiende Amolo. I'm sure the leader of minority, since he has not been admitted to the bar, he's yet to appear in court. But if he had the opportunity to appear in court, he would also know that it is not fair to mislead the country that there is outright disregard of whatever court orders, because he knows that IPRA, that is in charge of regulating fuel prices, did give notice way before the court order was issued. And therefore, he cannot be prosecuting a new case now. And since Otiendo Amolo is here and is appearing in court very soon, I'm sure they know how to transact that business in court. But we should not use this opportunity to mislead the country that indeed the Attorney General has in any way refused to adhere to any court orders. And Honorable Speaker, you know yourself, as Speaker of the National Assembly, you have set a very good example. As the President committed that this is a government that will adhere to court orders, he knows that since the suspension of the Finance Act, the government has subjected itself to the courts, and we are all waiting, just like my friends in Azimio are waiting, for the decisions of the courts. And we do that with maximum respect to our judiciary and our laws. Therefore, it's not right, Honorable Speaker, that we get into those issues that are sub judice and in court. And I'm sure the upcoming lawyer in Opio Andai has learned something.
Okay, Andai, your time was up, actually. I'll give him 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, it has never been my wish to get into matters which are sub judice in this House. But, Mr. Speaker, it is clear, really, it's common knowledge that once a court makes a pronouncement on a matter, unless it is valid or otherwise overturned through a legal process, it remains an order. And therefore, the Kenya Kwanza government must comply with that court order. But again, Mr. Speaker,
your time is up.
If you tell us to go to court, and yet the court, as of late, now been captured, you see now the police have taken over the court. They're not allowing anybody to go to the courtroom. You saw the police actually physically manhandling journalists, litigants the other day in the Milimani Law Court. Something is definitely wrong with the management of this.
Madha Wangari.
Mike, please. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support this report by the Committee of Delegated Legislation. And I support because, first of all, the anchoring law is the PFM Act. That is why, even with approval, these regulations have to find their way to this House. And Mr. Speaker, just a perusal of the short regulations is that they are basically trying to equalize and bring equity to the digital space, so that if Kenyans are paying tax, why would we exempt external people and people who are international and become unfair to our own? So I support that, Mr. Speaker. And secondly, I want to support the Committee of Delegated Legislation, because we have seen in the former regime, like 12th Parliament, Mr. Speaker, we had a lot of mischief from the executive by using regulations as a backdoor way to regulate and make serious ramification laws through this House, Mr. Speaker. So I pray that the Delegated Legislation Committee, even if you don't have the mandate to amend regulations, you should be able to look out for the public good, that these regulations go through the public participation, and where you're not satisfied, do not shy from annulling them, so that we can be able to align them not only to the Constitution, to the Statutory Instruments Act, and to all the legal framework in this country, Mr. Speaker. With those few words, I support. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Oundo.
Honorable Speaker, allow me also to stand here and support the report by the Committee on Delegated Legislation in respect to the value-added tax, electronic, internet, and digital market supply regulations 2023. Honorable Speaker, in a typical environment, you try to expand the tax net, you try to expand the tax bracket, so that you bring as many people, as many players into the bracket of paying taxes, and avoid the situations whereby you overtax individual Kenyans doing their business. Honorable Speaker, there is a lot of traffic in the digital space, especially by the young people, and even as the older ones. There is so much money being made, there's so much revenue, and there's also of employment, and hence, therefore, as we always say, whatever you earn, you must surrender to public good for the purpose also for enhancing social welfare. Honorable Speaker, The problem in this country has never been paying taxes. The problem has essentially been the way taxes are structured. Many of them, we don't achieve equity, and they are burdensome to some category of people. But most importantly and most annoyingly, that the taxes of the people of Kenya never end up doing what you're supposed to do, and that's why forever you will always find resistance on the amount of taxes that we are asked to pay. As I conclude, Honorable Speaker, must also commend the Committee of Delegated Legislation, which me, I, and you, we had the opportunity to see in the 12th Parliament. And at the first point that we must always look at, has there been public participation? And public participation, Honorable Speaker, should not just be a farce, should not be a facade, must be meaningful public participation. It is hopeless to go for public participation. Kenyans tell you this, and then you come to this Parliament or the floor of the House and tell you that Kenyans told you nothing. Just in the concluded process of the finance bill, Kenyans were very categorical, and even the subsequent opinion polls have been very clear that Kenyans, 71% of the Kenyans, oppose the way things are being done, the mode of imposing taxation on people of Kenya. We just hope and pray that in this particular one, there was concurrence from the people of Kenya that indeed this is a good tax. And secondly, that we hope this money, the revenue generated from these taxes, will end up with the drugs in hospitals, will end up with the classrooms in our schools, will end up with textbooks in our schools, will end up salaries being paid on time, will end up supporting different agendas or different services as provided for under Article 43 of the Constitution of Kenya. For those few remarks, Honorable Speaker, I support, but continuously warn that we must listen to the people of Kenya. Whatever brute force you use at one time or another, you must listen to the people of Kenya. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Other members, I'm not certain we have indicated interest on this specific agenda. I would request that if you are willing to speak to this, you kindly put on the intervention so that I'm able to tell who is speaking to what. The next one will go to the member for Tharaka, Honorable Murugara.
May I please, Madam Speaker, I wish to raise the Understanding Order 95 because we've listened carefully to debate in support and call upon the mover of the motion to reply so that we can move on to the next most important business. So Understanding Order number 95, I seek to you call upon the mover to reply.
Other members? Honorable Murugara has risen in his position so that the mover be called to reply under Standing Order 95. Order members. Order members. I had requested that you indicate through. Okay. Hold on. Honorable members, let me give member for Seme, because I can see him protesting on in his position. Before I put the question, there are not as many members who has indicated interest. Then I will, if we need to, we will put the question.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. Madam Speaker, this is a good idea. This regulation is a good idea, which has come because e-business is actually become the in thing and international, which means a lot of trade is being done through the e-media. And this is worldwide, which means even people outside the country are also doing business inside the country. And it's a big business. And if you look at these regulations, Regulation 3 actually lists all the areas that are concerned: downloadable digital content, subscription-based media, over-the-top services, software programs, electronic data management, music content, search engines, and so on. So that's a big area. However, Madam Speaker, there's one thing we have to look at as we do this. Remember, in the disputed finance bill, we were actually taxing the digital content And this, we really didn't like it because it was targeting a lot of young people. So as much as support this, it may be important to find in the regulations how we can protect our young people so that those who are making just small monies for themselves are not that taxed. And actually it is this in the such regulations that this can be done. Otherwise, it's something that we need, because as we move forward and we go into digital trade, it is worldwide. Big businesses from outside the country will actually do business here without paying taxes. So with that, Madam Speaker, if we make sure that later on we look at the regulation to protect our young people, who we are protecting by insisting we remove the taxation of a digital content, although it was reduced from 20% to 5%, that is the only thing I would have with it. Otherwise, I support Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Member for Seme. Member for Emuhaya.
Honorable Speaker, thank you. I think I arise to support this. One, let me begin by congratulating the Committee on Delegated Business, because it's bringing now order into this sector of dealing with the regulations, so that all of them go through the committee before they are actualized by those who made them, because we had a situation whereby authorities or ministers were making laws without those laws going through Parliament. Number two, let me support this by indicating that finally, in terms of business, we are headed towards e-business and e-commerce. And actually every other business, even those that are still operating on the ground, if I may use the words of the mover, will sooner or later be in the cloud. And therefore, unless we go to the space of the cloud to actually ask those who are trading their big money, big businesses, to actually pay VAT and other taxes, then we shall squeeze or shrink our tax net. And in a country like ours, which we are relied on external borrowing, and which we now want to reduce so that we depend on our own taxes and depend on our own selves, so that we don't expand borrowing from outside, this becomes a very good platform, Honorable Speaker, to expand the tax net and bring into bear those who are not paying these taxes and are operating on the e-market. And then lastly, Honorable Speaker, is the bit of competition, that most of our traders still remain on the ground, while big businesses are operating on the e-platform and cloud. And therefore, they are enjoying very favorable conditions of trade, while our own are not enjoying this so unfavorable trade conditions between our own traders and those that are operating on the cloud. As for digital content, I don't think this matter touches on digital content. It is really dealing, Honorable Speaker, with the businesses themselves and digital content, which we had discussed earlier in the. For without much ado, Honorable Speaker, I want to support.
Thank you. Member for Starehe.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute and support this motion. First and foremost, I want to commend the mover of this motion for showing the government that we can be more creative in matters raising revenue, rather than overburdening Kenyans with taxes, or rather borrowing. The other ways that they can exploit and get revenue to run the affairs of the government. I think it's a move in the right direction, where we're talking about equity in the market, in the online marketing space. I think this is a kind of motion that we should embrace, so that we can protect our very infant creative industry by making sure we have a level playing field, by introducing VAT on content or on businesses that are conducted by non-residents of Kenya. We protect our businesses, we protect our content creators, and I think if we get more proactive motions like this, we can be able to take this country further. Instead of overburdening Kenyans with taxes, we should look for creative ways in how we can incubate our young economy, bring down the cost of living and bring equity in the market space so that our people are able to do business and raise money to run their affairs. For the youth, this is, I think, is a move in the right direction because most of the youths now are into online businesses, and their biggest competitors have always been these non-residents who actually don't pay taxes to this country, making their products cheaper, even online, making their content even cheaper, and having, by the fact that their countries have very, very robust digital space technologies that they have embraced, they compete unfairly with our people. So I think I rise to support this motion, and I urge the Kenya Kwanza government to continue bringing more creative ideas rather than thinking about borrowing and taxing our people. Thank you so much, Madam Speaker. I submit.
Thank you. The Leader of Majority.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. And let me also rise to support the committee's report on the digital marketplace regulations on VAT. And Honorable Speaker, as has been indicated by the mover and numerous other members who have contributed, it is indeed true that VAT has been levied on Kenyans who are supplying services in the digital marketplace, but foreigners who are supplying similar services are not paying VAT on those services, Honorable Speaker. And therefore, the principal objective of these regulations is to ensure that even foreigners who are supplying services in this country, Honorable Speaker, are also paying taxes in this country. Because it's not fair that we levy VAT in the digital marketplace to our own people when they supply services that are similar to those being supplied by foreigners, but the foreigners supply services and end up not paying tax. Honorable Speaker, these regulations are in line with the commitment that the Kenya Kwanza government made to the people of Kenya, that we shall have tax policies and tax measures that will ensure there is equity, there is fairness, and there is certainty in the manner tax administration is done. And indeed, Honorable Speaker, these regulations now go to ensure that we do exactly as we promised, that we create equity, that a Kenyan who is supplying goods and services in the digital marketplace pays similar tax as a foreigner who is supplying the same services, Honorable Speaker, because the system that has persisted before has been one that is not creating equity between foreigners and Kenyans. Honorable Speaker, it is not fair since a Kenyan cannot supply services in the US or even in the UK, in Europe, in the Middle East without paying taxes. If anything, Honorable Speaker and members of Parliament are fortunate because they travel quite a while, for quite often, not a while, quite often, Honorable Speaker, to these countries in the West. And they know whatever little thing you do, even when you shop online, when you get a service delivered to you, whether it's Uber, whether it is something to do with other services, even in the hotels where you are working and you are doing online, the first thing you do is that there's a tax element to it, and that tax is collected upfront, whether you pay with your local card or your international cards, Honorable Speaker. And therefore, there was no equity before, and now we are creating that equity by ensuring that just as you pay taxes when you access services from those countries outside of our own borders, Honorable Speaker, even foreigners who will now supply services here will pay taxes to the Kenyan Revenue Services, Honorable Speaker, or to KRA in terms of VAT. Two, Honorable Speaker, is about fairness. And it is one of the principles of taxation that a tax administration system must also create fairness, and therefore a system that was not unfair, these regulations are creating that fairness. And there is also certainty, Honorable Speaker. Whether you are in this country, whether you are outside, foreigners will be able to know what is our tax regime, VAT rates. They will be able to know for what services are you liable to pay VAT, and therefore they also be complying with our own tax laws as they comply with tax laws in their own countries. Because, Honorable Speaker, it's also interesting that many of these companies and corporations that offer digital marketplace services are paying taxes and paying very heavy taxes back in their home countries, including excise duty, Honorable Speaker, but when they come here, they don't even pay that VAT. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, this will indeed, in a great way, not just aid in creating fairness, equity, and certainty in the tax administration process, but also ensure, Honorable Speaker, that the Kenyan government is able to tap into new sources of revenue, Honorable Speaker. And that, again, is a commitment that we made, and the President has made that commitment that will be innovative in creating new tax measures, Honorable Speaker, that will ensure we do not overburden Kenyans, Honorable Speaker, with huge taxes. And I am happy that now even those of us in the minority now are appreciating the need to collect more taxes so that we do not overburden our people with a huge debt burden, Honorable Speaker. And this can only happen by innovative ways of creating or widening the tax base. And I remember during the Finance Act debate, Finance Bill debate, Honorable Speaker, many people challenged government, be innovative, create new ways of
30 seconds, wind up, Leader of Majority.
Honorable Speaker, I was saying to be innovative, to tap into new ways, Honorable Speaker. And when we spoke about bottom-up transformational agenda, Honorable Speaker, and we said we'll be able to expand the tax base, this is part of that expansion of our tax base to be able to tap into new sources of revenue to finance government operations, Honorable Speaker. And with those many remarks, I beg to support.
Honorable Justice Kemei, member for Sigowet Soin.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity you've given me so that I can also add my voice on this report. First and foremost, Madam Speaker, I want to support the report that has been brought to the House by Honorable Chepkonga. My colleagues have talked about equity, fairness, and other principles of values, Madam Speaker. I wish just to point out that this particular report actually levels the playing field in terms of trade. A large volume of trade at the moment, Madam Speaker, is transacted through the digital platform. That means if this report had not been brought to Parliament, Madam Speaker, we would have continued losing a lot of money, which will go a long way in providing services to our people and in terms of development. So, Madam Speaker, without much ado, I want to support and thank the committee for bringing the report to Parliament. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Order members, today we have quite a number of schools. Allow me to recognize the following in the public gallery. We have Nun Kopir Girls, Kajiado East, Kajiado County. We have Narumoru Boys in Kieni, from Kieni constituency, Nyeri County. We have Ola City Day Primary School from Narok East, Narok County. And we also have Umoja Day Secondary School, Laikipia West, Laikipia County. In the Speaker's Gallery, we have Kisingo Secondary School from Kibwezi West constituency, Makueni County. And we have Koibeyot Secondary School, Bomet East constituency, Bomet County. On behalf of the House and the Speaker, I welcome you to observe the proceedings of the House. On that point, I have accepted to give to Honorable Mwengi Mutuse from Kibwezi West. You will not only welcome them on your behalf, but on the behalf of the other members. 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to welcome all the schools and the students who are in our public gallery together with their teachers to the House of Parliament, the National Assembly, to request them to be keen and to listen to the proceedings so that they may learn and they may also get the necessary exposure that will help them in their studies and also in their future life. Particularly, Madam Speaker, to welcome Kisingo Secondary School, that is from my constituency, Kibwezi West, just near our constituency headquarters. I know is an upcoming school performing very well, and to inform them that through the national government CDF, this year we'll be buying them a bus so that next year they do not have to use public transport to come to Parliament. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
I will indulge the member for Narok 2 minutes as we close on that one.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. I also want to welcome Ola City Primary School to this House. And Madam Speaker, plus the other schools who have come here on benchmarking. Madam Speaker, as a member of the Education Committee, I'm so privileged to have our children here because I know, Madam Speaker, they learn a lot. Ola City Primary School is doing very well, and Madam Speaker, I know this one will go in record that they've been here, and this will add to their performance. So I want to encourage them to work hard because that is the way to go. Education is an equalizer. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Member for Narok. Back to our motion. The next speaker would be the member for Kathiani.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Speaker, for this opportunity. I also rise to support this report by the committee, and I also happen to be a member of that committee. Madam Speaker, modern times call for modern solutions, and it's important to understand basically what is this electronic internet digital marketplace supplies. And Regulation 3 is very clear and has spelled out each and every one of those items that fall within that category. But I'd like to point out there's a lot of business that goes on in that space, even educational issues, things to do with music and games, movies, even transport. I mean, things like those platforms for transport like Uber, small cabs, and the rest. They all fall within that digital market space. But, Madam Speaker, as some of our speakers have said before, the foreign multinationals have not been paying VAT on trading in Kenya and doing their business here. But when we trade with them, we're supposed to be able to pay VAT. So basically what this thing has done is that it has actually leveled the playing field. We are able to, we pay taxes to them, they also pay taxes to us. Madam Speaker, the issue of double standards is one of those things that we must always try and get rid of in our deliberations and in all our actions. I saw recently an example of double standards when Kenya Kwanza have said that you cannot do demonstrations, but then the members of Kenya Kwanza are allowed to do demonstrations. In fact, even some of the members walking around wielding weapons. And nobody talks about it, nobody takes action against them. But when it comes to members of Azimio, any small attempt to even meet 2-3 people, it is faced with serious, serious attacks. So, Madam Speaker, just like the way we are dealing with these regulations, let us ensure that there is a level playing field in everything. Madam Speaker, again, it is also a very good concept because we are being creative in collection of taxes. We are being creative because we've looked at other ways. How else can we collect money? Instead of overburdening that Kenyan who has already been so hard hit by the cost of living. So we've gone out and come up with a regulation that is going to give us money from multinationals. So it's not coming from the local Kenyans. So that's a very good concept. And so we must also be creative how we handle our situation as a country. Even issues of demonstrations, how do we handle them? We cannot be barbaric, we cannot be primitive and be fighting and clobbering Kenyans because of demonstrations. Let us be creative when we are looking for money. Let us be creative also when we are handling Kenyans. So let's say no further bloodshed. Madam Speaker, I support.
Order, members. As I had indicated, on this motion, if you're willing to contribute to this one, you put on the intervention. I only have 2 members pending, and then we will call the mover to reply if there is no other interest. Member for Kwanza, Honorable Ferdinand Wanyoni.
Madam Speaker, thank you so much for the opportunity. I want to take this opportunity to say thank you for this committee for bringing up this because it appears you are doing business here without collecting taxes, which actually is not the right thing to do. Therefore, I think we support this proposal because, one, people are operating outside the regulations, and therefore I think that's how we have been losing the income, we have been losing the value for money. And I want to agree with my friend here. We're now being creative. It's a way of looking for money. Of course, this is not punitive. One should not take this as a punitive move, but a way of looking for money outside the box. And I think it's also that the foreigners were actually bringing in some goods here without being taxed. And that, again, is an issue of tax collection. And therefore, I think Madam Speaker, I want to take this opportunity to thank the committee and ask them to go to cast the net wider so they can be able to get as many operations coming outside and even within to pay some taxes for whatever business they are doing in the country. And therefore, I want to take this opportunity to thank the committee, and I support.
Thank you. Member for Sirisia.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, for giving me also a chance to contribute on this very important motion. Honorable Speaker, many of us in this country, Madam Speaker, have not been paying tax the way we can see. Madam Speaker, this is the only way to go. And I believe that our country is now coming up, and the digital space, Madam Speaker, is going to help this country at least to collect enough revenue from everywhere, every corner, so that we will not be borrowing much from outside. Madam Speaker, this regulation is good because it is trying to catch space for so many things. Even internet has been helping in so many aspects. And I believe, Madam Speaker, that taxes in every these developed countries, Madam Speaker, taxes is a must to every citizen. And in this country, Madam Speaker, many people, many business people have been waiting to pay tax. But with this online, the digital space that we are getting, I'm sure, Madam Speaker, that nobody will evade tax in this country. So, Madam Speaker, I support. Thank you very much.
Other members, I see there is no more interest on this motion. On this specific motion, I will therefore call the mover to reply.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'd like to thank all members who have ably contributed to this motion. Madam Speaker, the members have been very relevant in their contribution. However, Madam Speaker, I'd like to make a few clarifications. One, these regulations do not touch on the finance bill that is pending in the High Court. Madam Speaker, as you know, this government is law-abiding government. We cannot bring regulations or VAT increase through the back door. We are a law-abiding country, and we will also like the other people on the other side to be also law-abiding citizens. Madam Speaker, this particular regulation, as many members have just pointed out, will create equity in the market, will create fairness, and will create a level playing ground for all the players in the digital world. And so, Madam Speaker, I'd like to thank all the members who have contributed, and I therefore reply.
Order, members. We have the requisite numbers. I therefore put the question that this House adopts the report of the Committee on Delegated Legislation on its consideration of the value-added tax, electronic, internet, and digital marketplace supply regulations 2023, laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, 5th July 2023, and pursuant to the provisions of Section 67 of the Value-Added Tax 2013, approves that the value-added tax, electronic, internet, and digital market supply Place Supply Regulations 2023, published as legal notice number 29 of 2023. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as are of a contrary opinion say nay. The ayes have it. Next order.
Order number 12, the Food and Feed Safety Control Coordination Bill, National Assembly Bill number 21 of 2023, second reading.
Leader of Majority.
Honorable Speaker, I beg your indulgence on that of the House, Honorable Speaker, to skip order number 12, the Food and Feed Safety Control Coordination Bill, National Assembly Bill number 21 of 2023, the second reading of this bill, Honorable Speaker, because the committee, this bill, Honorable Speaker, is before two committees, the Committee of Health, and the Chair Health Committee was here, actually, was supposed to do this, and the Committee on Agriculture, and they are still considering the report being a joint committee. They were not able to finish during the recess. But the Chair Health has indicated to me that they are meeting this week to try and finalize their report, and hopefully we'll be able to continue the second reading once they table their report, Honorable Speaker. And therefore beg that you do indulge us.
Thank you. That order is therefore stood down. Next order.
Order number 13, the National Rating Bill, National Assembly Bill number 55 of 2022, second reading.
Majority Leader.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that the National Rating Bill, National Assembly Bill number 55 of 2022 be now read a second time. Honorable Speaker, Article 209(5) of the Constitution confers on Parliament the powers to regulate the exercise of fiscal responsibilities by county governments, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, you know, county governments, by dint of the Constitution, have powers to impose levies and taxes on the people. But Parliament is also given powers under Article 209(5) of the same Constitution to regulate the exercise of these fiscal responsibilities by our county governments to ensure, one, that we do not, or rather our county governments do not impose taxes and levies that undermine the greater national good. And two, there is uniformity, certainty, and fairness in the taxes that are levied and rates that are levied across the country, Honorable Speaker, so that we do not have one county levying certain rates and taxes that are so obnoxious as compared to those of other counties, and therefore make even the cost of doing business in certain counties more expensive than others. Honorable Speaker, this is the reason and the object of this bill, which seeks to provide for enhancement, for certainty, for uniformity and fairness in levying of property rates by our county governments, while providing a secure source of income or revenue for many of our county governments that are suffering from very low own source revenue. Honorable Speaker, members will appreciate, and indeed the country appreciates, that our county governments under Schedule 4 of the Constitution are charged with numerous functions and responsibilities. And Kenyans in our constituencies are waiting for all our county governments to offer them goods and services. And many of the people who expect goods and services, Honorable Speaker, are property owners and rateable properties, Honorable Speaker. But some of these properties, even in major cities like Nairobi, you will find a lot of non-uniformity and fairness in the manner in which people are paying rates. For instance, in Embakasi East constituency, where the Honorable Babu Owino comes from and represents the people, Honorable Speaker, you will find somebody with 5 acres in Embakasi East, because that's one of the constituencies within Nairobi where there are still large landowners. But the amount of rates that they are paying to the Nairobi city government is negligible compared to what somebody is paying for in Lavington on half an acre, or in Kilimani on quarter of an acre, Honorable Speaker. And you also find, Honorable Speaker, in this country we have what are called not slum landlords, but slum billionaires. You will find someone in Mukuru kwa Jenga or Mukuru kwa Ruben who owns 10 acres of Mabati structures and making probably 10 to 12 million shillings from very vulnerable and poor people who he does not even offer any sanitation facilities for. And that person, the rates you find them paying because probably even the land is not adjudicated, is negligible. Yet a landlord who is in Kilimani on a block of flats sitting on 1/8 of an acre is paying way much higher than even what they are able to collect in terms of rental income and income to themselves. And therefore, it creates a situation where there is no uniformity, there is no fairness, and this bill therefore seeks to create that uniformity and fairness in levying of property taxes by county governments. Honorable Speaker, the bill also seeks to consolidate the valuation for Rating Act Cap 266 and the Rating Act Cap 267 into one, which will now be referred as the National Rating Act. And as I said, providing a comprehensive and uniform legislative framework that will regulate how all our county governments across the country levy rates and other levies that they may be levying to property owners. The bill, Honorable Speaker, also seeks to synchronize the terms and definitions in line with current definitions on valuation of rateable property, current practice, Honorable Speaker, because these two acts, the Valuation for Rating Act, Cap 266 and Cap 267 of the Rating Act, refer to definitions and things that were done back then. But as with all other professions, even in the valuation profession, those of us who have studied land economics and those who are valuers know that there are new terms and definitions in the industry, and therefore this bill seeks also to align to that. It also seeks to identify the mechanisms on how our county governments shall undertake valuation for rating and imposition of rates on rateable property to reflect the powers, as I said, that were intended under Article 209(3)(a) for counties to impose property taxes or property rates, adhering to Article 10 of the Constitution on Values and Principles of Governance, Article 232 of the Constitution to ensure there is conformity to the values and principles of public service, and of course to Article 232 to conform to the principles of public finance. Honorable Speaker, this bill will also provide for the establishment of the National Rating Tribunal that will be responsible for resolution of disputes relating to property rating. Honorable Speaker, today, if the county government of Nairobi or the city government of Nairobi imposed rates on the Honorable Robert Mbui, who I know owns quite a number of properties in Embakasi South, and the Honorable Mbui felt that they were being unfair, he has no recourse. And therefore, we are creating a recourse so that the Honorable Robert Mbui, if he feels his investments in Kathiani are rated better than those in Embakasi South, then he has somewhere a tribunal that he can walk to and appeal to. Therefore, we will create that mechanism for him through this bill. We also enhance the use of appropriate technology in undertaking valuation for rating and rating-related purposes, Honorable Speaker. You know, in the past, you had to walk the miles to be able to identify where particular land parcels are. Today, with modern technology and with geo-positioning technology, we can be able to use geo-positioning technology to be able to identify exactly where a piece of land is. As I was saying, Honorable Speaker, you will find billionaires who own land in our slum areas. But because the title reads Mukuru kwa Jenga or Mukuru kwa Ruben, and maybe that Mukuru kwa Ruben is the title that, or the description of the area that is reading that. But you find with time, South B Estate or Plainsview has now grown into some of those formerly slum areas. And therefore, the value of land in that area is not as accurate as it was 10 years ago, Honorable Speaker. But with modern technology, you'll be able to geoposition that particular land reference number and know exactly where is this land. You can even be able to estimate the actual size of any size of land. And there is technology today.
Honorable Babu Owino, this is not Embakasi. You do not just cross the floor like that.
Thank you. You know, Honorable Babu Owino might be imagining he's in Jacaranda grounds. But we must forgive him because he was just released the other day from police cells. Honorable Speaker, I was saying with modern technology, it is possible to even be able to now, with geopositioning, estimate, not actually estimate, get the actual size of land without land values having to go and using very rudimental technology to value land. And therefore, this bill now also creates that opportunity for us to be able to use modern technology in undertaking valuations, because technology also enhances fairness and certainty. And therefore, unlike in the past where you have to talk, what in Kenyan parlance they say is kuongea na chai ama kitu kidogo, to value us, to be able to value land for you appropriately. Now you will not need to do that. With modern technology, you can be able to know this value, the value of land in this particular area, the size is this much, and similar properties around that area are paying whatever amount they are paying, and therefore have a system that is fair. Honorable Speaker, this bill also has identified the role of counties for the implementation of the objects of the Act, which shall include ensuring, as I said, there is fair and equal treatment to all rateable owners, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, it is not fair that there are people in this country, and I'll give you the case example, Honorable Speaker, of Kahawa Wendani, Kahawa Sukari. You will find many people who, including members of parliament, who live in Kahawa Wendani and Kahawa Sukari, and they are paying rates to the county government of Kiambu and some to the county government of Nairobi. But across the river, you will find people who own ranches within the city, but they don't pay rates either to the county government of Nairobi or the county government of Kiambu. And Honorable Speaker, we must ensure that there is fairness. It is not fair that somebody in Kahawa Sukari or Kahawa Wendani is paying rates, but another person, probably because of positions they have occupied over the years, they don't pay rates. Honorable Speaker, now with this kind of bill, there will be fairness. The county government of Nairobi will be able to levy rates. I know the member for Embakasi West, Honorable Mwenje, is getting itchy when I speak about these things. But it's only fair that every taxpayer pays their due taxes, even on land. Whether you own a ranch within the city, whether you own an eighth of an acre like myself, whether you own no land like the member from Kisii County or the Honorable Nyikal owns a lot of land in Karen, so he cannot be raising his hand for me to point to him. I meant the Honorable Elvis, who does not own land in Nairobi, but he owns land, huge chunks in Kisii. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, there will be fairness with this new bill. We also ensure, Honorable Speaker, that the burden of property rating is shared fairly amongst the ratepayers. And that's what I was driving to, that if you have more land, you pay more. If you have less land, you pay less. And therefore, you share the burden, Honorable Speaker. Because the only reason why levies and rates and taxes are levied on people is because you are the people, if you are property owners, you are the people enjoying the services that will be offered by the county governments. Kenyans are very quick at demanding services and supply of goods and services in their neighborhoods. And you've seen, Honorable Speaker, in the recent past, the upcoming of gated communities. All these gated communities are coming up, and the people who sell what they call, in my local language, buroti maguta maguta. And those who understand the language know what buroti maguta maguta is. Those people who sell serviced plots, Honorable Speaker, will market those plots as service plots. And all they do is grade a Maram Road, put 5 poles of solar lighting, no provision of sewer services, no, they will probably bring in one line of, and put one tap to show you that there is clean drinking water. But they never tell you when you build and develop that property, with time, even if they had a borehole on that property, Honorable Speaker, that borehole will not be very healthy to use or very secure to use for drinking water, because you are sinking septic pits, and whatever comes from your sewer system is percolating into the water that you are then drinking with those gated communities. Therefore, it's only fair, Honorable Speaker, that there are levied rates that will ensure that county governments are able to provide them with proper sewerage. They're able to bring them adequate water to use in those gated communities, Honorable Speaker. And because this is going out even beyond Nairobi and our cities, even in our rural areas, Honorable Speaker, today if you go to Kikuyu, what was otherwise known as Deya Ngobe, because it was all grazing land in the past, today there are Nairobi Ndogos, there are huge, very modern estates being built there, but requisite services are not coming, and we must ensure that our county governments have adequate revenues to be able to provide those all services, whether it is roads, whether it is water, whether it is sewer systems, street lighting, so that, Honorable Speaker, again, our people do not fall prey to the vendors of land that who market land as serviced, but it is not serviced. It's just one tap that is put there to show people that there is water. Only when you build and you start living there, you realize it's only one line of water that came that could not supply beyond 1,000 liters a day, Honorable Speaker. This bill, Honorable Speaker, also takes cognizance of the needs of the county and promotes imposition of rates to boost socio and economic development. Those are the issues I'm speaking to conduct effective public participation and public awareness that now counties, Honorable Speaker, and this, Honorable Speaker, speaks to an incident I have seen in my own county in Kiambu, that without proper public participation, Honorable Speaker, and public awareness, county governments embark on systems of changing what rates they are levying to property owners, Honorable Speaker. And the lack of public awareness and public participation means that even our members of county assemblies appear before their county assemblies and pass whatever legislative proposals are put before them without paying regard to the impact of those propositions on landowners, Honorable Speaker. I have seen in my own county in Kiambu, land that is agricultural and freehold, that previously was not rateable. The county assembly in one finance bill, I think in 2017 or 2018, imposed rates even on agricultural land. Honorable Speaker, you can imagine a farmer in Ondire, or a farmer in my village where I come from, or a farmer in Gekambura, or a farmer in Kerwa, or a farmer in some village in Karachuonyo. Should the county government in Karachuonyo impose such rates as those that were done in Kiambu, is now required to pay rates in terms of hundreds of thousands for 2 acres, at times to an extent where they are required to pay rates higher than what they are able to produce on that particular farm. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, if you do not have a legislative framework that will ensure that there is fairness, there is certainty, so that whether you are in Kikuyu or Kabete or even Utheru here, Honorable Speaker, and you are farming, you cannot be levied rates at the same rate as somebody who has developed his land or subdivided his land and has built blocks of apartments, and you are required to pay the same rates. That person who is generating more revenue or more income from rental income should be able to pay more rates than a farmer who is producing food, so that we also don't discourage our farmers. Honorable Speaker, if you go to Netherlands, and I'm sure, Honorable Speaker, the time I had a trip with you to The Hague, way back in 2015 or 2016, you remember as we landed early in the morning in Netherlands, right outside the airport, farmers are growing wheat. And you find the same in very many other capitals around this country, because there is deliberate policy by government to ensure that you encourage even urban farming. And people who are farming even near cities are able to have tax regimes and tax administration policies that encourage them to get into farming, so that we don't only encourage people to get into what is the creation of concrete jungles today, because rental income will generate more money, but all those people have no food, Honorable Speaker. Today we are crying about the cost of food, but we are crying because of over the cost of food. Kitengela here, Honorable Speaker, parts of Kajiado, parts of the lower Machakos, Honorable Speaker, are areas where people would be growing food if we encourage them. Those who have freehold land, those who can farm. The county government of Machakos, of Kajiado, of Kiambu, encourage farmers, someone holding an acre and can grow crops, food crops, encourage them to do that. And therefore, there must be that, not discrimination, what do you call it? Disparity between those who are in income generating activity and those who are growing food, so that we encourage farmers. Honorable Speaker, this bill will also provide for a criteria for the determination of categories of, for instance, rateable properties for purposes of levying of different rates, and those that will be exempt rateable property uses. And Honorable Speaker, that's what I was speaking to. For instance, agricultural land, county governments could classify certain areas where there is agricultural land as exempt from paying property rates, because we want to encourage agriculture and food production. A county government could also determine, for instance, in Thika, that industries are what they want to encourage, and therefore create lower rates for industries and levy more for those who want to do housing and or even grow food crops. Those in Kisumu could decide that if you are creating landing bays around the lake, then you will enjoy lower property rates, so that you encourage investors to come and invest in our counties. Honorable Speaker, we also, through this bill, ensure that there is prudent and responsible use of funds collected for purposes of this act to enhance service delivery in our counties. So that, Honorable Speaker, there is also a clear, transparent, and accountable system in our county governments to ensure that whatever rates counties are collecting. Today, Honorable Speaker, I had instance about 3 or 4 months ago, I wanted to get a loan from somewhere. And I needed a rates clearance certificate. When you walk into the county government of Kiambu offices, depending on which officer you find which day and their moods, or what you are to offer them, you get different valuations. Honorable Speaker, this must be a thing of the past. Any Kenyan should be able to know, even online, how much rates are your property subject to, so that you know at the beginning of the year, my 1 acre property in Karachuonyo, I will pay 10,000 shillings. And therefore, it will not be at the whims of a revenue officer down in the county government, because this is what is happening in all our counties. And now speaking about Kiambu, I'm only making reference to Kiambu because that's where I come from. Even in Nairobi County, and I'm a property owner in Nairobi County also, so I know. You will get various amounts depending on who, which day, and the mood they are in, and whether you look like someone they could talk to. So they give you a bill depending on who you are and how you approach them. So we want that to be a thing of the past, so that Kenyans transparently are able to know, even if I am able to, through geopositioning, tag onto a land reference number in Lodwar town, I should be able to know online how much rates will I pay. So that even banks, when they are advancing credit to members of the public, they're even able to know the approximate value based on the rates that are being paid. Because today, Honorable Speaker, again, many banks are holding titles of security that are worthless, because people colluded with valuers, they colluded with government officers, banks got collateral for land that is basically valueless. But with a proper system like this that will be created under this Rating Act, Honorable Speaker, we'll be able to put some of these things behind us. Honorable Speaker, I did speak about the need for effective public participation and public awareness to ensure that members of the public, again, Honorable Speaker, know, so that even as I buy land in Narok County to grow wheat, I should know what are the rates that the county government of Narok will levy on that land, and be able to do my arithmetics and be able to determine whether I'll make money from the wheat growing. If I want to develop a block of flats in Kitengela or in Mlolongo, I'll be able to know what are the rates that are chargeable, Honorable Speaker. And therefore, we also, in a way, encourage foreign direct investments into our counties, both from foreign and domestic investors, Honorable Speaker. And this is something that we must continuously encourage people to invest across the country. And for that to happen, Honorable Speaker, there must be certainty on what is rateable, what is not rateable, what rates people are going to pay. Honorable Speaker, lastly, this bill proposes to introduce 4 forms of rating. This will be the annual rent of value rate, where land is rated annually, and you know with certainty this is how much you pay annually. There is an area rate, as I was saying, even now with global positioning and modern technology, you should be able to determine on what size of land you pay what amount, whether it's per square meter or per hectare or per square foot. Then an improved site value rate and a site value rate in combination with an improvement rate. Because, Honorable Speaker, it's also not fair. There are properties even within CBD that are not developed, and therefore there is no improvement on that land. But you find on a property that has a 20-story building where someone is collecting about $500 million shillings in rental income, they are paying an equivalent rate with that person who is using his land within the CBD as a parking lot, or giving that land to our market traders to use for the Maasai market on Tuesdays and the day they were doing. So there must be that distinction on the area, whether land is improved, whether it is not improved. And I was speaking, Honorable Speaker, even in the rural constituencies and rural areas and rural counties, even on land that is agricultural and non-agricultural land. And I want to believe, Honorable Speaker, as we come to the 3rd reading, the Committee of Lands will consider bringing amendments to make sure that there's also a clear distinction between agricultural land. And, Honorable Speaker, I am very particular on agriculture, and I have said this deliberately, Honorable Speaker, in moving this bill, because one of the greatest risks that we face in this country today is that of food insecurity. The housing agenda, Honorable Speaker, as vilified as it was being vilified, Honorable Speaker, in a way addresses the question of food insecurity also. Because we are fragmenting our land, Honorable Speaker. Before, some years back, the lowest fragmentation was 50 by 100, which is an eighth of an acre. Today, Honorable Speaker, I have seen in my own county fractions of 20 by 80. And they have titles, Honorable Speaker. They are 40 by 80s. Those so-called gated estates, they are telling people we are selling you quarter an acre, but they are selling you a 40 by 80, some 70 by 30. In Embakasi, they will tell you they are all 33 by 66. And, Honorable Speaker, those are the issues we are speaking to, that we must have those distinctions, Honorable Speaker, so that when we come to the 3rd reading, we are able to ensure there is actual fairness. Because the more we fragment our land, the more we expose ourselves to food insecurity. If we are able to safeguard our land from further fragmentation and secure more of our land for use for agricultural purposes, encourage our farmers by giving them lower property rates on agricultural land, we encourage even more of our young people to get into food production and agriculture and secure food security, but not this business that we are now in of what I call buroti maguta maguta, where every free and open space in this country today now is up for fragmentation and subdivision for housing estates that are even not planned and defined. Honorable Speaker, therefore, this bill will be able to address some of those things. The bill, Honorable Speaker, has also provided for the appointment and powers of a valuer to undertake preparation of valuation roles, and also introduce the office of a chief government valuer with respect to standardization and harmonization on preparation and implementation of the valuation roles across the counties. Because, Honorable Speaker, as I said, we leave it to the whims of revenue officers in our counties to determine what rates to levy on property owners. Honorable Speaker, that becomes a very good avenue for corruption. That's why I was saying in my own county, depending on which officer you find on which day, you will get a different figure. And they all get those figures from the system, funny enough. I don't know what they do to the system. Some will indicate for you on a piece of paper. Some will generate in a system. I don't know how they're able to change those systems. So we want a system where we have a chief government valuer who will be able to rationalize so that based on the value of land in different parts of the country, the chief government valuer now will be able to standardize and harmonize the valuation roles across the counties so that one county doesn't overtax people as opposed to another, and therefore make some of our counties very unfavorable or unattractive for investments, whether by local or foreign investors. Lastly, Honorable Speaker, Part 4 of this bill contains provisions on the valuation for rating, declaration of rateable areas, and methods used for valuation, and proposes to introduce a valuation cycle of 5 years with provision that the county assemblies can extend the period for a maximum of 2 years. The bill further provides guidance on the preparation and contents of valuation rolls and supplementary valuation rolls, together with alterations, publication, and objections thereof and exceptions provided. Honorable Speaker, it's important that whatever valuation rolls we come up with in our counties, every 5 years we're able to review them. And the county assemblies can extend